even though I'm not a big fan of true retirement, I do think that we've got to be financially prepared for that reality, and looks like Americans are not.
America, like as much problems as it has, it's still one of the most amazing times to be alive. And while there's real problems to be solved when it comes to inflation and the Fed and the rates and expenses and college tuition, we forget that we have agency over the choices we make. We have autonomy in how we spend our own money.
I think the problem is the American dream is a little bit more accessible than it should be.
We've created a shortcut to it through debt.
Yeah.
Because now I can have that house and the car, but I don't really have it. The lender owns it all. The bank owns it.
I believe the difference between upper class and middle class is not income. I think it's the mindset about money, period. So what's a number that you would like most Americans to retire with?
You're going to need $1 million to have a 30-plus year retirement. So that number's not inflated.
So you think $1 million is the baseline?
The more income you have and the better things you do with it, the better off you're going to be, and the more you can take care of your family and the ones that come after you.
Coming up, we're going to break down the retirement crisis that no one is talking about, but they should be. So I've got somebody who should be talking about it. Ramsey personality and my good friend George Kamel joins me next. All right, I got news for you folks. My name's Ken, and I'm here to help you win at work. And why in the world would you want to win at work if you don't have anything to show for it? Let me tell you what is coming. Old age. And I'm reminded of that almost daily when I get out of bed and I'm a little sore, even after a good night's sleep. And old age is coming, and when old age is coming, that means you got to be prepared for it. And even though I'm not a big fan of true retirement, I do think that we've got to be financially prepared for that reality, and looks like Americans are not prepared. And I'm sad to say that Gen X, my generation, seems to be the least financially prepared and the least emotionally prepared. My good friend George Kamel joins me. George, glad to have you with us.
It's an honor.
We're going to dive into this. So right out of the gate here,
I love the paper crinkle.
We've got ourselves a headline from Fortune magazine. Gen X is the least confident about retirement as crunch time nears. Specifically, and I got to get the glasses.
Here we go.
You know why, George? Because
old age.
I'm Gen X, and the eyes, they just kind of fade on you.
Yeah.
And honestly, being your friend for a long time, I've realized how much smarter your glasses make you look.
I can't say that for you, but yes, in general, I do think glasses.
You don't think mine make me look smarter? Well, they're functional.
You've always been smart.
You're going to have to deal with it. Only 62% of Gen Xers feel confident about being able to financially support all the things they want to do in life. This is from an Alliance Life Insurance annual retirement study. This is 2024 data. Now, just to put that in context, George, that's well below the 82% of baby boomers who are confident about being able to support themselves in retirement. And this is very interesting. Millennials are at 77%. So we start there. Here we go. My generation, you're a millennial, I'm an Xer, and it's a sizable gap. You know, when we look at these numbers, 77% of millennials, the generation below them, 82% of boomers, the generation above them, but all of a sudden Gen X, oops. Any thoughts on that? Ooh. Why you think that generation in particular, and I know that there's no real hard data on this.
I'll tell you my take.
That's what I want to know. Why my generation slacking off a little bit?
Let's start with the boomers.
Okay.
They you know, as far as things going for them, they bought homes long ago, which have now since appreciated greatly, and they have a lot of pensions involved with their careers. They had a lot of time to save. And then millennials, on the other hand, well, we had access to, you know, more financial literacy, the internet.
Yeah.
We're a little bit hipper with the apps, and we go, you know, we got to really take advantage of these retirement plans.
Yeah.
Gen X is square in the middle, on top of the fact that because of their age, they're having to now, you know, pay for their kids' colleges. I mean, you're on the cusp of this with your kids.
Yeah.
And so this is putting a real crunch where they went, I didn't prepare enough, I didn't save enough, and now I have some really big expenses on top of, you know, just looming at the door, retirement 10, 15 years away.
Yeah.
What am I going to do? Yeah. And so the good news is I've got a lot of hope for them, and I'll lay out some data points and some practical things they can do.
Well, we're going to get into that. And by the way, I think you're absolutely spot on there. I think I'd throw one other element in there. It's pretty interesting to me that the boomers, you know, they kind of just were in those jobs where they did the same thing. You know what I mean? They came after their generation, their parents, which were the greatest generation is what they're referred to as. But there was still a lot of the working the same job for 30 plus years. Yep. And they just kind of were like, I don't even have to think about retirement because it's kind of built into the old pension, like you said. And dare I say they didn't teach their kids, my generation.
That's
fair. You should probably be prepared for this, whereas it feels like what you're saying, the millennials are kind of savvy to it on their own. They're going.
We saw our parents retire with very little, going, that's not going to be us.
That's what it is.
We don't have a pension like mom and dad. We got to do this for ourselves.
That's right.
We have the benefit of that, and I think Gen X is just square in the middle between a rock and a hard place.
Do you feel like the FIRE movement, which stands for, that's an acronym, folks, financially independent, retire early. This is where people like work like mad.
Making crazy high six-figure incomes for a short period of time.
But not doing anything at all, putting it all away with the whole idea of retiring early. Is that largely a millennial idea, or there are some Xers in that group?
I would say if you look at the timeline of how long this has existed, I'm sure it's happened before the FIRE movement took storm, but I think with the internet and forums and sort of a community around this, millennials have really gathered to say, we don't want to be like our parents.
So I think it's a millennial idea.
Yeah. So this idea of a huge savings rate, I don't think anyone even thought, oh my gosh, you could save 70, 80% of your income if you do it the right way.
That's right.
And we also see that debt is a huge problem in this. We can't ignore the fact that the reason why people aren't feeling secure, the reason why people can't contribute to retirement is because of their debt payments.
Well, this is perfect. So you lead me right to it. A good guest always creates their own segue. You've done it. Gen Xers, again, my generation, 55% saying they wish they had saved more. The main obstacles to saving that they cited were daily expenses, credit card debt, and housing debt. So you've got some undisciplined, kind of expense creep in the daily expenses, but the credit card debt and the housing debt, oh my goodness. And they look up and they go, I didn't have anything to put away.
When you think about when it comes to housing, not only has the cost gone up with property taxes, homeowners insurance, but you also got to think about people who refinanced, they got a HELOC, they did all kinds of things which, took them a step backwards financially. Instead of paying it off like many of the boomers have, going, all right, I did my 30 years of time, I got rid of the mortgage. Well, Gen Xers are still square in the middle of their mortgages.
Yeah.
And so they're making decisions keeping them there on top of racking up credit card debt, trying to cover those expenses, trying to keep up this lifestyle. The first stat you mentioned, 62% said they feel confident about being able to financially support all the things they want to do in life.
Yeah. Right.
That varies greatly. What is all the things? Do I want to retire and have a yacht?
Right.
Or, can we live a more, simple life where we don't have all the crazy luxuries, sacrifice for a short period of time to eventually have those things?
Well, and I think it also speaks to some emotional maturity, doesn't it? I mean, I want a Lamborghini.
And you deserve a Lamborghini.
I don't think I do.
You work so hard.
I don't think so. I think I should probably change my wants. Don't
Agreed.
You think?
We have to make a priority list here. Because you know this, we're one of the most blessed societies in this country. America, like as much problems as it has, it's still one of the most amazing times to be alive.
Yeah.
The amount of just abundance. We sit here complaining from our smartphones about how expensive everything is.
Exactly.
And so life is better than we make it out to be.
Yeah.
And while there's real problems to be solved when it comes to inflation and the Fed and the rates and expenses and college tuition, we forget that we have agency over the choices we make. We have autonomy in how we spend our own money.
Yeah, I think that's right. Okay, this is interesting. Gen Xers say, on average, that it will take a bit over $1.1 million in savings, and we're talking about retirement savings, to be able to retire comfortably. They expect to have around $660,000. So when surveyed, they're going, probably going to end up here based on the numbers, but I think it's going to be here. You're laughing over there. What's your reaction to that?
Whoa, we're halfway there.
That's right.
That's what comes to mind here.
Yeah.
So it's like if you plan to be halfway there, it's a bad plan.
Right. Well, but let's just talk about the reality of 1.1 million in savings. Is that an accurate number? Or did they just pull that out of their ear or somewhere else?
Well, I think we look at life expectancy. I mean, if you retire at 65, there's a good chance if you're in decent health, you could live to 95.
Okay.
So when you think about a 30-year retirement and not wanting to, deplete that $1 million before you're dead, well, you might need $1 million.
So what do you
think? That's a fair number.
If you were going to pull a number out of air today, and we're not going to hold you to that.
Sure.
But what do you think is a safe, moderate number to where you go, you've got cushion even if you make it to 97 with some issues?
When you think about, retirement and safe withdrawals, there's a lot of thoughts out there. But generally, let's say you're going to withdraw 4 to 8% out of your retirement. Well, that could mean you need about 25 times. At 4%, you need 25 times those expenses to have a retirement that doesn't deplete. And when you move that number up to 6, 7%, well, you need even more. And so that means you're going to need $1 million to have a 30-plus year retirement. So that number's not inflated.
So you think $1 million is the baseline?
Yes.
For most people.
Now, can you make it work on less if you have lower expenses? Sure.
How much margin does $1 million give a person?
That's the question. Where do you live? What kind of healthcare expenses are you going to have? Are you completely debt-free?
Right.
The less debt you have, including not having a house payment, the more I go, yeah, you could live off $1 million.
So would $3 million within reasonable expenses, what is a person, so do the math, the 25 times. You're really good at this.
Well,
so
let's say
what does $3 million get you?
Let's say you had $3 million and you wanted to withdraw, let's say 7% would give you $210,000 a year.
Okay. So that's on a lifestyle of $210,000. And that gets you how many years at that?
Well, that means you can live off of that as long as, the number doesn't dip down too much, because you don't want to deplete your nest egg too quickly.
Right.
But it depends on your goals. Is your goal to leave $1 million to your kids from that retirement account, or will you just leave them your house? So you kind of have to have a bigger retirement plan of what your plan is. Steve Harvey famously said, I'm not leaving my kids nothing.
Yeah.
Guy Fieri said, I'm not leaving my kids nothing. They're going to learn how to work hard.
Yeah,
and that's fine.
I don't know if I'm completely that hardcore about it, but I do have that sense that.
But would you be okay having, dwindling down to close to zero in a retirement? I'm okay with that, knowing my kids are going to inherit real estate. They're going to inherit a whole lot more. They're going to have their own life.
You. Might as well spend it.
Exactly. And that's the mentality. So I don't think there's any right or wrong there. But I do think it's wise.
If you could wish it for most Americans and you were just to pull a number out, what number would you give most Americans? Well, in other words...
Ooh, this is fun.
Yeah, because we're talking to people right now, hopefully, that still have time. All right? And so if you were going to have a number that where you said, look, anything more than this, you're being a pathetic baby and you want too much. This is a good life. And if you start early and you take the George Kamel class and you start in your 20s, what's a number that you would like most Americans to retire with?
I think $2 million feels good to me. And if you have no payments...
Feels a little low for you being so magnanimous right now.
I thank you for your use of magnanimous.
I set you up to be magnanimous, and you gave us $2 million.
Well, I think
but
$2 million...
explain that choice.
$2 million if you want real comfort. You want to be able to travel a lot. You want to be able to do some things.
I want to be comfortable.
And so that's where I go $2 million if you get no payments and you're in a decent cost of living area.
Yeah.
And again, your lifestyle will definitely determine this number. And so if you want to live a crazy lifestyle where you're spending $50,000 on travel a year, well, you're going to need more money. And so that's where most people just haven't even had that conversation. We spend more time deciding on where to go out to eat than we do figuring out our retirement.
That's absolutely right. All right, we got to take a quick break, but don't move. More from George Kamel coming right up. Hey, folks, I want to tell you about Aiden. He started at Bethel Tech 2 weeks after graduating high school, and less than a year later, he's 19 and working as a full-stack software developer. He loved the idea of being able to work at his own pace, but what he really thought was cool was Bethel Tech's faith-based learning environment and being with classmates who had a similar worldview. Now, if this is you, or if you have a son or a daughter that's looking for the next step out of high school and they may be tech-minded, at least interested, you need to talk to Bethel Tech. Listen to this. Fortune Magazine named them as a top 10 best UX UI boot camp for 2024. And right now, they're offering you 10% off because you listen and watch the Ken Coleman Show. They also allow you to pay cash, and I know you'll like that. Go to BethelTech.net/Ken Coleman for details. Terms and conditions apply. All right, so let's stay with this $2 million number. All right, let's start walking through for people that are watching and listening right now they feel like they're late to the game. They didn't start at 22 or 23, first job, the first 401k, or they begin to invest. Let's take it to, let's have some fun. Let's say early to mid 30s.
Okay.
Nothing saved. What do they got to do to get to $2 million?
Well, if you plug these numbers into our investment calculator, you would see you don't actually need to invest all that much. You just need to invest consistently. And here's why. In your 30s, you still have time on your side.
Right.
And I've got some numbers here just to show you an example of what these numbers turn into.
I love when you do this.
Because what this all comes down to is opportunity cost. If you're not investing enough, here's what it's costing you. So when you're 25 and you look at a 65, 65-year-old. That's 40-year gap. Well, every dollar you invest at 25 is really worth $50 because of compound growth. So you invest $1 at 25, it's worth 50 at 65. So it's about a 50x.
Right.
When you're 35 and you start, every dollar is 18. So it's 18x from 35 to 65. At 45, now it turns into $6 for every dollar you invest. So you can see the numbers start to dwindle as you get older because you have less time on your side. And from 55 to 65, every dollar you invest is worth about $2.
Oof.
So you see the gap there. At 25, that $1 could have been 50. At 55, that dollar is now $2.
Okay, so we have 55 and up going that haven't done anything, and the data says we got them. They're in here.
They're going to need to work longer. They're going to need to invest more.
Well, I feel like they've got to have an answer to the question, why bust my butt? It's not even worth it. Is it worth it? Is it too late? What has to be adjusted?
I think it's never too late to take advantage of compound growth. Now, it may not be as much as if you had started at 25, but I love to say the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The next best time is today. So don't fall for this, fallacy that, well, because I didn't start at 25, it's not worth putting anything away. That's just an excuse.
Right.
You're justifying a lifestyle.
Right. So let me ask the dumb question. For every dollar spent, it's worth $2, but that doesn't necessarily play out if you're investing more. If you start really going after it, you can, again, you're running out of time compared to the 30-year-old, but you can really max that out, can you not?
Oh, and you have catch-up contributions. So once you turn 50, the IRS says, hey, I know the cap for 401ks this year is $23,000, but if you're 50 or up, you could do $30,000. Right. If you've got an IRA, instead of $7,000, you can contribute $8,000.
Right.
So there's ways to catch up.
So the answer is, if you put more money in it, you're still coming out on top.
Exactly.
It's just not at the rate that you would have if you're younger.
Yeah. And the problem truly is savings rate. It's not that they don't see the math. It's they're going, Ken, where am I going to find $23,000 a year to invest? And the truth is they never made any lifestyle changes. So their habits are still crazy out of whack. They have debt probably they're still carrying into their 50s. And that creates a huge problem. Because if we had the margin to invest, I think more people would do it. But the problem is they have no margin because of their lifestyle, because they're trying to pay for all kinds of expenses. Yes, partially because of inflation. But largely, I think it's the debt payments. When these people add up what their debt payments are per month, I'm going, wait, you're telling me you don't have $1,000, but you told me your car payment, you told me your student loan payment, you told me your credit card payments. That's over $1,000 right there. Don't tell me you don't have it. Tell me your priorities are out of whack.
That's exactly right. I'm going to get into the headlines a little bit more here and get your take on some things. MoneyWise article here, 46% of U.S. middle-class workers are now slashing or completely cutting out contributions to their retirement funds. Let's first dive into that. Now, what do you say? Because at Ramsey Solutions, we'll tell somebody if they're in debt, we'll tell them to pause. But that's a temporary situation, not a complete slashing. Is this another sign? 46% of middle-class workers slash. Is it just saying they're cutting it too tight? Inflation's too high? And can we really blame inflation here, or aren't we the problem?
Well, they're citing inflation as the main reason, which, is it's getting weaker of an excuse. As time goes on, as inflation cools, at some point we have to go, no, you made the choice to purchase a $60,000 car with a loan with a crazy interest rate. You made the choice to purchase more house than you could afford. So it's easy to point the fingers at inflation and the Fed and it's everyone else's problem. But at some point we got to go, what am I going to do about this? And that's where I look at their debt more than I do the rate of inflation. And that's almost half. Almost half of people are saying, I'm going to opt out of the opportunity costs we talked about with compound growth.
Well, this is half of the middle class. So this is an important distinction because we hear a lot about class warfare in election years. We hear a lot about class warfare in general if you're paying attention to political conversations. But what's interesting is that that's always kind of a socioeconomic label as if it's a sticker. And I think the very thing that you're talking about, financial discipline, would allow someone to move from middle class to upper class, the decisions that they make. And there's the irony in all of this, and it could be very unpopular right now. But the reality is that you can get yourself out of the middle class by reducing expenses, which creates more margin in your life, and then doing the things that it takes to actually make more money and allow it to stay around. Not just make more money, spend more money. And so at some point, George, I believe, tell me what you think about this, I believe the difference between upper class and middle class is not income. I think it's the mindset about money, period.
Well, when you think about assets versus liabilities, the upper class is generally more, invested. They're putting money into assets, things that have value, things that hold their value, things that grow in value. The middle class, what do we think of? We think of the guy driving the truck with payments that he can't afford, with a car that's going down in value, putting things on the credit card with interest. And what we found is broke people tend to pay interest, wealthy people tend to earn interest. That, I think, is what separates those. And when it comes to the middle class, most of America, when you look at lower middle class to upper middle class, that pretty much sums it up from a percentage. There's very few people who are on the poverty line and super, super uber rich. Most of us are all in that range. We found that people making six figures, half of them said they live paycheck to paycheck. And so I think you're right. I don't think it's just an income problem, because it's not like the more money you make, the better chance you have at retiring. The more money you make, the more chance there is you're going to inflate your lifestyle and have lifestyle creep, step in to where you go, well, my expenses are now $8,000, $9,000, $10,000, $12,000 a month. And no wonder you can't save for retirement. Yeah. So you have to make this a priority, and you've got to limit your lifestyle.
I think the problem is the American dream is a little bit more accessible than it should be.
Can you explain that? I like that. I like where you're going with this.
I think that buying a house, owning a nice car, somewhat equates to a lot of people the American dream. So then they go get it, but they can barely afford it. In other words, that's how you get that data you just cited. You have six-figure earners living paycheck to paycheck because they have too many payments.
Well, what's happening is that
they can afford it in their minds.
Afford the payments.
But they can't afford it in reality to what it does to them. So my point is the American dream is a little too accessible, and it's not really the dream. The American dream as it is cited is just about freedom to kind of go live your life. But now it's become about stuff. I say all that to say you come from an immigrant family. And I think you can speak to this. Your parents from the Middle East. Is there a different mindset from the immigrant who comes to America than the average American that we're talking about who comes up, and they may not come from wealth? Maybe they're middle class or lower middle class, but they see the car commercials, right? They see, I can get a home. I just wonder if that immigrant attitude isn't what we all need. I'm curious. Am I wrong? Am I right? Am I onto something?
Well, I think the thread there with most immigrant families that I've seen is work ethic and frugality. Now, you do find those that adapt to the American culture and they go all in and they go, I want this abundance and I want this wealth and I want to shortcut it to where I'm going to take out all these loans. But by and large, what you find is those communities and those cultures, they tend to prioritize saving for a rainy day. They tend to prioritize building wealth and leaving a legacy and thinking about a bigger picture for their family. And I think that's why, you see cultures prioritize education, for example, to go, I want to have a good career. You rarely find, immigrant families push, to have their kids go be a whatever underwater basket weaver. There's a reason their stereotype exists of you got to be an engineer, a doctor, a lawyer. That's how it was in my culture. Everyone around me, my whole family. I got a bunch of nurses, nurse practitioners, doctors, engineers. Those are the people I grew up with. I was the black sheep for going a different route. But I think that speaks to the fact that the more income you have and the better things you do with it, the better off you're going to be, and the more you can take care of your family and the ones that come after you and your aging parents, which again, in different cultures, the parents are moving back in with you later on in life, and you better be prepared for it.
So there's a built-in pressure to save.
Exactly.
And there's also a sense of we're not here for the shiny stuff. We're here for the freedom stuff.
And they have no one to impress.
Yeah.
Think about that.
They're
aiming for a better life for themselves. They don't really care what, Joey, the coworker, thinks about the car they drive.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's really interesting.
But to your point, I love that idea that the American dream is too accessible.
I think it
because
is.
we've created a shortcut to it through debt.
Yeah.
Because now I can have that house and the car, but I don't really have it. The lender owns it all. The bank owns it.
Yeah. And so what happens is it becomes a nightmare. And so then what do we see? We see young people, well-meaning young people, on TikTok going viral, sitting in their car after a long day of work, feeling the absolute crush of debt and the crush of desire. We showed a clip recently on the show, George, a young lady sitting there, and she's like, I can't afford a house. I can't do this. And as I sit here today, it hits me that it's the crush of desire. We've concocted this idea that everybody's supposed to get out of college and have a really nice car and a really nice house and be able to afford going out 2 or 3 times a week. And that's desire, misplaced desire, but that'll crush you too pretty quickly when you feel like everybody else is doing it and I can't afford to do it. I'm a loser. Life sucks. Do you see that in this generation?
Oh, I mean, with social media now, before you didn't know anything except what your neighbor was doing. You knew what kind of car your neighbor was driving. Well, now with social media, I know what everyone in the world is doing constantly and what vacations they're taking. Even recently, I fell for this. I had an old coworker friend, and she was on vacation after vacation to this concert, and in my head, I'm going, wow, like, how does she afford this? And I know she's paying cash, so it was not a competition thing. But in your mind, you're going, wait, should I be doing more? Am I enough? Am I keeping up? Do I need to go do more?
You know, this happened to you the other night. You sent me a DM on Instagram. You were
more jealousy.
You told me I got to get in on this poker game. You saw the bourbon stash.
FOMO.
And I got a DM from you that said, I got to get in on this. And what did I say?
You said you do.
And I'm going to get you there.
That's the proximity principle.
You got to learn how to play, but you got to learn how to play poker.
I can't promise you that.
Well, then there's no ticket to that event.
I will work on it.
You see what I'm saying? You got
No, that's fair.
So, but I mean, we all do this.
Yes.
The
There's
point
a natural inherent FOMO we have, and social media just makes that even worse.
Yeah, absolutely right.
Can I give some hope though to the person listening, watching?
Yeah.
Who might be that Gen Xer, who might be that person who's feeling the pinch.
Let's give them some hope.
Well, I think sometimes when you have too much emotion, math helps kind of bring some facts to it. And when you kind of get in the math weeds, some emotion helps bring you out of that. So this is largely an emotional thing, and there's a financial piece to it. So let me show you what a 45-year-old, if they are starting from nothing, they have $0 in their 401k, can I show you how they can still become a millionaire?
Yeah, let's do it.
So if you're 45, you start from $0 in a retirement, and you start investing, you've done the steps, you got out of debt, you have an emergency fund, you're ready to invest 15% of your income into retirement. Well, for the average household income, let's call it $72,000, that would be $900 a month you put into that retirement account. Well, from 45 to 67, if you just put $900 away every month, you never even get a raise, that would end up being $750 to upwards of $1 million, depending on your average rate of return.
And give us the range on that return, because some people lock in on that.
Oh, sure.
So we talking high end 10%?
That's 8 to 11%.
So 8 to 11.
Yeah.
So anywhere from 750 to $1 million.
Which
starting
is
at age 45.
With nothing. If you've done nothing, you just heard about the Ramsey plan, you heard about this show, and you were starting at zero, you still have a chance to have $1 million at 67 years old in that one account.
Yeah.
And that's barring you didn't have a house that was paid for. And so it's very much possible to still have a sizable nest egg, to still retire with dignity.
Yeah.
Now, the later you start, the more you might have to compromise on your retirement dreams.
Right.
But don't tell me that you're not gonna. You're just gonna throw your hands up in the air and say it's not possible.
That's right. And let's point out, if you change your lifestyle and all of a sudden you start that $900 a month turns into $1,500 a month, or $2,000 a month, now all of a sudden we've got some real gains.
Exactly.
And we can get to the $2 million that you said is ideal.
And here's the most amazing part. Looking at the numbers, you would think, well, I got to put away $1 million. No. Here's the numbers. You got to put away $237,000. That's your contributions, 45 to 67, $900 a month. What you actually put in from your paychecks was $237,000, which means $750,000 of that was growth. That was compound interest working its magic. And so that's what I love about this process is don't get hung up on the numbers of I can't save $1 million. You don't need to. What you need to do is learn to live on $900 less than you do now.
Yeah.
If you can do that, you can retire with dignity.
Yeah.
And that might take sacrifices. That might take getting out of debt and lowering your lifestyle.
Yeah. So much of this that we talk about, George, is mindset. They understand the math you just gave us. They can see it now. We've talked about living on less than you make. We've talked about getting rid of debt, all those things. In 30 seconds, that's all I have left with you. I want you to talk to these people. They're sitting there going, okay, George, it all makes sense. I get it. I just don't know if I can do it. They're just thinking about all the stuff they got to unravel, all that tangled up wire. What do you tell them to do first to just get this thing started so they can actually build momentum?
Well, for starters, in our millionaire study, we found that you don't have to be a prodigy financial investor to make this happen. We found that most of them were mediocre. They didn't even choose great funds. You don't have to have it all figured out, but you do just have to put money away. And when I say that, that means putting a sizable chunk, not just a match, not just 3%. When you get to that 15% number, it unlocks something, and you learn to live on the rest. It unlocks something magical, because that is now set it and forget it. And you kind of have this crock pot mentality instead of the microwave mentality of, you're right, you can't have it tomorrow, But if you're patient, 15 years from now, 17 years from now, it could be a very different life you're leading. You don't have to retire broke if you're just willing to get started. If you don't know, do your homework. Do I have a retirement plan through my employer? If you're self-employed, you still have tons of options. A simple IRA, a SEP IRA, a solo 401k. There is simply no excuse not to invest in the world that we live in today and how the American economy is doing. The stock market is booming. Regardless of what you see in the headlines, the S&P 500 is just moving up and up and up.
That's
and
correct.
If you just get on that roller coaster and don't get off, you will retire with dignity.
Yeah, I love it. Question I think many people want to know, does corduroy make you feel richer?
I would say it gives me a undue confidence.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's something about it. Feels regal, feels a little bit timeless, and I would say it helped me in this interview today.
Yeah, and I notice you have a big theme going on from the watch band to the coat to the glasses. Caramel Camel.
Thank you. I like that
That's
nickname.
what I see going on here. I love it.
Are you going for like a Kermit Green today? I think is my final question.
Well, we're talking money, we're talking wealth, and I thought, let's go ahead and give the color a bling.
Let's go green.
Although that's not bling green. Bling is actually shiny.
I don't think any
things.
guy in a sweater has ever said, I got the bling.
Yeah, well, that's true.
But you know what? You're not trying to impress anyone, Ken.
No, it's just that green looks good with my eyes. Apparently, my wife tells me. Hey, tell people about where they can find you, the website. You're on YouTube. You're crushing it there. The book is Breaking Free from Broke. A fantastic, fantastic read. Tell us all the things where we can connect and why we should connect.
Absolutely. At George Kamel. That's Kamel all over the social platforms.
Caramel Camel.
On YouTube as well. We got 3 episodes a week on there trying to bring some levity and simplicity to complex money topics, just like we do today, to help encourage people that they can build wealth, they can have money before they die, they can live the life they want if they're willing to sacrifice in the now. And Breaking Free from Broke, the book, I think is a great primer on all the things, on the debt system, how to get out of it, how to build wealth the right way. And that's my hope, is that I think this is possible for anyone, regardless of their age.
Yeah.
And if I can just give them a piece of hope today, I've done my job.
Yeah, well, you've done it. You've done it well. Before I let you go, I think most people watching this want to know who's your favorite co-host on the Ramsey Show.
Rachel Cruz.
Okay.
But it's rare that I get to host with her, and so you are right there.
That didn't go the way that I thought that was going to go.
I'm kidding. If you've ever seen The Ramsey Show with Ken Coleman and myself hosting, you could tell we're having a good time.
You still didn't answer it. So
Ken Coleman, we'll rewind the tape.
It did not go
Ask
like
again.
I thought it was going to
Ask
go.
again.
I teed him up, and he just couldn't bring himself to do it.
I don't. When you wanted it badly, I didn't want to give it to you.
I get it, and that's what made it funny, and that was just for fun.
This is fun. Thanks for having me on, Ken.
Yeah, that was good. I want to say thanks to George Kamel for hanging out with us. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to give us a like, a subscribe, and a share, and we'll be back before you know it.